everyone, my name is Rebecca, and today I will be sharing with you commonly used vocabulary for the BESTEP writing test, Part 3, Integrated Essay. Just as a reminder, for the task requirements in Part 3, you will be shown two figures and have to summarize and then state your opinion on a topic using this information. So let's take a look at some of the charts that you might encounter during this test. You might see a table chart, a pie chart, a bar chart, a line graph, or a process diagram, and these charts do different functions. A table chart will list data. A pie chart and a bar chart may compare data, and a bar chart could also show changes over time. Line graphs always show changes over time, and a process diagram is used to show a process. Describing different functions will require using a different vocabulary. Let's take a look at the vocabulary used to list data. If you look at this table, you will see that there are 4 rows, and there are 5 columns. So you can use the terms row and column in order to describe where you are pulling data from. Let's take a look at this table. Here are some example sentences you might write about this table. This table summarizes the International Price Comparison Index in pound sterling across the UK in 2010 for cheese, bread, milk, burgers, and coffee. According to the data, England had the highest prices for all 5 goods. As you can see, in my first sentence, I am summarizing what the table is about, which I can find from the title. In the second sentence, I am pulling a main point from looking at the data. When you're describing data or a table, or any kind of figure, you can use these following terms: shows, illustrates, depicts, gives details about, summarizes, provides information about. You can also use the terms compares or contrasts in order to emphasize that you're comparing data. When you are referring to a chart, you can use terms such as according to, based on, in. When you are referring to a second chart, you can say shifting to or turning to. Now let's look at some terms you would use to compare data, which would be used for a pie chart or a bar chart. This pie chart and bar chart were actually taken from a mock test online. Let's take a look at the pie chart first. For example, let's look at this section. Nearly a third of teachers consider adjusting teaching to suit student needs as the main challenge of online teaching. Another way to say this is 30% of teachers consider adjusting teaching to suit student needs as the main challenge of online teaching. Notice that in the first sentence, it's a bit more vague, and the second sentence uses a specific percentage. So when you're describing data, you can say XX% of, such as 30% of. You can also use fractions such as a third of, half of. You can also say a majority of or a minority of. But keep in mind that these two are a bit more vague. When you want to be more accurate and emphasize that a number is above a certain amount, you can say more than, above, or over. When it is slightly less than, you can say less than, under, almost, and I use the word nearly. When it is around a certain amount, you can also say approximately, near to, or roughly. Keep in mind that during the test, they might not be giving you specific percentages, so you might need to use some rough estimates in order to describe the data. Now let's take a look at the bar graph, and let's look at this section of the data. Over half of students consider lack of social interaction as the main concern of online teaching. You could also say 54% of students consider lack of social interaction as the main concern of online teaching. Notice that I'm pulling the labels and title directly from the chart. This is a great way to save time and make sure that you're hitting the key points of each figure. Similarly, you can describe this data using the same words as using the pie chart. Now let's take a look at how to describe changes over time. This might happen for a bar chart or a line graph. Let's take a look at this bar graph first. As you can see, there is a positive trend in the data. You can say, computer ownership in the UK rose gradually from 2000 to 2010. Another way to say this is, there was a steady growth of computer ownership in the UK from 2000 to 2010. When you're describing a change over time, if it is a positive change, you can say increase, rise, or grow. If it is a negative change, you can say decrease, fall, drop, or decline. If it is a zero change, you can say flattens out or levels out. Notice that these words that I put right now are all in the verb form, such as the first sentence. But in the second sentence, I changed the term in order to become a noun. So you can also do this for your own sentences. If you notice the purple, I also added some adverbs in order to more accurately describe the kind of change. For a small change, you can say slight or slow. A medium change would be consistent or steady. And gradual is kind of in between these two. A big or fast change, you could use the terms rapid, sharp, considerable, significant, or dramatic. Notice that these terms are in their adjective form. If you want to change them to adverbs, you can add ly to most of them, such as gradual to gradually. When you are using a verb such as rose, you will use the adverb gradually to describe. But when you are using a noun such as growth, you will use the adjective form steady. Now let's turn to the line graph and see some changes over time. In this data, in the orange line, there was a slight drop in the number of visitors to Dublin between 2013 and 2015. When we look at the blue line, following a slow decline from 2014 to 2017, the number of visitors to Cardiff increased sharply. Notice that in the second sentence, I'm describing two different changes that have happened over time. You can also do this in your sentences. I use the same words as the bar graph for describing change and the adverbs for accuracy. It's much more accurate to say a slow decline and then an increase sharply than just saying decline and increase. Now let's take a look at the process diagram, which is used to show a process. Some words to describe the process would be man-made or human-produced versus natural. Another word you can use to describe the process is a linear process versus a cyclical process. A cyclical process is one that will repeat. And some other words that you can use include step, stage, and phase to describe each section of the process. Let's take a look at this example first. This diagram illustrates the man-made process of producing wine. First, grapes are harvested and placed in a crusher. Following this, they are pressed. The process continues with the juice being fermented, aged, clarified, and filtered. Lastly, the wine is bottled and distributed to consumers. I combined a lot of the steps in this process in order to condense my paragraph and also put some of the key points together. When you are describing production, you can use terms such as produce, which means create or make, or distribute, which means to give out or to sell on the market. When you are describing steps, you can put these terms at the beginning of your sentence in order to explain to the reader what you will be describing. You can use terms like first, second, third, then, next, following this, and for the conclusion, finally, lastly. Another way is to use some verbs in order to indicate to the reader what part of the process you are in. For the beginning, you will say begins or starts. In the middle, you can say continues, follows. And for the last step, you can say ends. Let's take a look at a cyclical process now. This diagram depicts the natural hydrological cycle process by which water moves through the environment. This process loops through the stages of transpiration, evaporation, condensation, and precipitation, which happen concurrently. When you're describing a cyclical process, you can use the terms cycle, loop, repeat, or recur. For steps that are happening at the same time, you can use the terms simultaneous, concurrent, or parallel. And you can change the form of these words depending on where you put them in your sentence. Lastly, I wanted to share some transition words that might be helpful for you to use in your essays. Remember that when you are writing your essay, you should be using transition words such as these in order to guide the reader and let them know where you are in your argument. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or would like any more support, you can come join our Leap Write-In English Writing Practice Lessons and sign up for an appointment through the English Writing Lab website. Please also remember to follow our Instagram for more information and tips and tricks for the best step. Good luck!